what if the water intake from your lake, that's assuming that you live next to the lake and you don't have enough space for a well, so you get your water directly out of the lake and you use the water to drink, cook, shower, bathe the children and pets. And that's the same water that we know potentially could cause skin rashes and blisters, nose, throat, eye irritation, liver, neurologic toxicity. The dogs get really sick. And it's hard to know whether that stuff isn't just going to float in when you're not expecting it. So here's a diagram. We won't have time to spend a lot on it, but this is a water intake for domestic abuse. Here's the intake part down here that goes up into the house where there's a treatment, and the type of treatment and how that's monitored is important to know how safe the water is that is then pumped out to the other parts of the house. And you can have an algal bloom that will get near enough that'll come into your water intake system from a boat going fast, stirring up sediments near the shoreline, or having it happen somewhere else and having the wind blow it over to where your intake is. You don't necessarily have to be right at the spot where this starts. So this system also, all of them have a storage system that goes with it. And the question is, if that gets contaminated, how do you know that that's empty? Now, you could go in and completely empty that and then refill it up, but a lot of people aren't that sophisticated about it. And this is one of the things that was observed in California. They went around a lake that had some HABs, that is the cyanobacteria blooms, and they looked, and what they could find is that that many of these intake systems had water in it that were at or above the maximum tolerance about for an adult. It would be considerably lower for children or newborn or something like that if they were staying there. And you could actually see cyanobacterial or algal cells in 28 or 20 out of 28 tap samples, so that these systems depend a lot on how more recent they've been put in and the knowledge of the people that have these. But basically, what the CDC says is that these ways of purifying water don't always work the way you think they're going to do. The chlorination can kill the bacteria, but it doesn't filter away the toxins. And conventional water treatments can generally remove intact cells and low levels of cyanotoxins, but this is, they're working on relatively low concentrations, and it says they generally remove them. If it was my water, I wouldn't be too happy with that. One of the questions is, could you just taste and smell it? Well, here's the problem, is that the materials, or these substances that make taste and odor are not toxins. And so the material that, or the treatments that remove these don't necessarily remove toxins. And so you can't necessarily tell by taste and smell about the quality of the water. So that doesn't work too well. There is a EPA recommendation we'll get to in a little bit. Oh wait, I was going to say, this is a good website here from our DEC, and it just says understanding the risks of piping surface water into your home. And I think that's a reasonably good discussion of what your risks are. People might want to review if they do get their water from the lake. One of the problems is that some of the treatments are effective and some of them aren't. It depends on the species that dominates a bloom. It's to do with the chlorine dose, the pH, that is the acid amount, and the temperature of the water. Most home units aren't able to do that much. And applying the wrong treatment, such as boiling at a specific state, can actually result in the release rather than the removal of the toxins. And so it's hard to know for sure what you get. Now, if you're camping, what can you do? Well, all these different types of instruments that allow you to filter water are available. Here's a little chemical treatment, but none of them give you adequate removal of the toxins. And so, if you're going camping, you want to bring along enough of your own water, unless you're going to a known source that is tested, like a spring or a well that might be along the way that you're going to travel. But most of the time, you want to just take your own. So, can you test it at home yourself? Well, you can get these test kits that you get 17 parameters, but uh, toxins are not on that. So you got to look. A number of microsystem test kits are made, but they're really made to test samples that are multiple samples. Like this is a 96 well, and you could end up spending a lot of money. Here's another test kit that you can run. It costs about $425, and the if you did one line of these, they usually have 12 strips of 8 wells. You could get this down to about $35 a test. But the question, I think, partly is how often do you want to test your own water, and what about trying to depend on that? Now, I just saw this one the other day. This is really set up more for a home test kit. It didn't allow me to get a direct cost on them, but I think they're probably around $20 a sample for a home test kit, which is possible. But the company says, if necessary, what these do is they give you a threshold for whether it's below the amount that is toxic for humans. But if it's necessary, you need to confirm that by ELISA or HPLC. And it's hard to know for an individual home use whether this exceeds a safe amount and by how much. And it may be well for recognizing a new contamination, but it's hard to know how your whole system has then been cleaned out, which I think is another issue. So if you want to confirm that in terms of the concentrations, you may have to do HPLC or something like that. And most basements would not be allowed that kind of equipment. And if you had a basement that looked like this, you might be okay, but most people aren't able to do that sort of thing. So my recommendation is that if you get your water from lake into October, you realize that the lake water treatment system is not reliably adequate to treat cyanobacteria toxins in moderately high concentrations. Now, high concentrations are not seen yet in Otsego Lake, but I think that is a real concern. Again, this is that DEC site, the same one I talked to about a little bit ago. But remember, you do still have to have the standard filtration UV light chlorine treatments to kill E. coli or Giardia, because you don't want to get sick from that, and those are different risks, and you still got to keep that out of your water. But you want to supply bottled water for drinking and cooking. Remember, cooking it doesn't destroy the toxins. And if you shower with lake water, I'd make it as short as possible, rinse off, and then immediately towel off, because you want the water removed. You don't want the water to dry down and concentrate the toxins as it would dry on your skin. And there are people with pulmonary sensitivities where the splash from a shower could be a problem for you, and I'd go shower somewhere else. So this is the CDC's website for optimizing treatment of cyanotoxins. And it's much more complicated than we want to get into in this discussion, but I put it in here so if somebody wants to look it up, they have a reference to it. So the question is, can we get water from the village of Cooperstown, because it gets its water from the lake? And the answer to that is yes. They test regularly, and they are an ELAP certified laboratory. That is, the state that said that they do a good job. The results are kept track of, and they have to report that. And basically, they can adjust it to whatever they have to. So that's a safe place to get water. good news is there's no deaths have been reported in humans from acute ingestions. And I don't know of any serious human illness from cyanobacteria in Cooperstown through this last summer, at least in the conversations I've had with the emergency room doctors in the area. So when will it go away once it gets in the lake? Well, the half-life is about 10 weeks. These are very stable compounds, and they can persist for months or even years if they're in a cool place just sitting around. And the microcystins can persist after boiling. We talked about that a couple of times. And they do get degraded a little bit by sunlight if it has the presence of what's in humic substances, which is what's in garden soil. It isn't clear how that happens, but it does. And water that's rolling down a brook also seems to clean it up better as it goes along. And these don't account for dilution, wind or water movement in a lake. But I think the history of HABs being present in the lake is an important thing for you to think about whether you want to use the water or not.